Hello and welcome. My name is Eddie Button and I am the second countertenor in the Kingsingers. This is the last in our series of workshops for the Kingsingers New Music Prize. We've launched the prize to encourage musical creativity at this time. Music has indeed provided hope and healing at some of society's most challenging times. As you'll no doubt know, our competition has 4 categories, a panel of wonderful world-renowned judges, and a choice of 5 beautiful texts to set. And it's free to enter. There's also a $1,500 prize as well. We really hope to be able to premiere the winning works in Washington National Cathedral on Sunday, February 28th, 2021. We also wanted to help composers develop their craft by offering a series of free digital masterclasses with leading figures from the world of composition. So please do look at our YouTube channel to see our 4 previous workshops with legends of the choral world: Charles Anthony Silvestri, Eric Whitaker, Bob Chilcott, and Valerie Santagat. As part of the competition, we have partnered with publisher Walton Music so that the winning works can be made available for performance. And we are so happy today to be joined by members of Walton Music for a question and answer session. And I'll soon hand over to Nick, our second baritone, to introduce our guests. The New Music Prize is generously supported by our dear friend Ron Gunnell and our charity, the Kingsingers Global Foundation, a 501c3. The competition forms part of the Foundation's vision for finding harmony in our divided world. We'd be really grateful if you'd submit any question you have in the live chat, and Nick will make sure as many of them as possible get asked. Over to you, Nick.
Thanks very much, Eddie boy. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to whoever and wherever you are in the world. And we're delighted to have with us today 2 hugely important and knowledgeable gurus from the world of choral music publishing, Susan Labar and Alec Harris. Now, Susan is an editor at Walton Music, but alongside this, she is also an accomplished composer. She's been commissioned by choirs worldwide, had works appearing on Grammy-nominated albums, and recently had a premiere at Carnegie Hall. Alec is the president at Walton Music, which is one of the largest choral music publishing companies in the world. They have a huge collection of repertoire from sacred music through to educational materials, publishing for a few. Today, they'll be able to answer pretty much anything you've always wanted to know about publishing but have been too afraid to ask. And they'll debunk all of those myths about copywriting, publishing, score setting, and submitting. And these are really important things to know if you're a composer of any age, ability, or passion. Do please remember to write any questions or reflections you have in the chat box, and I'll do my best.
I think we've lost Nick there a bit. Anyway, I will bring in Alec and Susan. Hello.
How are you doing, Eddie? Nice to see you.
Yeah, lovely to see you too. Hello, Susan, as well. How are you?
Hello. Very good.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. We are so grateful. You were going to each start off by saying a little bit about yourselves. So why don't you go for it?
All right, I'll start. I'm Susan Labar, and I am the editor of Walton Music, like Nick said, also a composer. I've been at Walton for a little over 6 years now, and worked with another publisher previously. And so I have many years of experience, and at least from my perspective, accepting composers' submissions and determining what's right for our catalog, and then also publishing my own music, both with Walton and with other publishers. Yeah, that's what I'll say for now. Alec?
Hey, everybody. My name is Alec Harris, and I'm honored to be president of GIA Publications, including Walton Music. We have 4 different divisions. I'm actually fourth generation in my family in the music publishing business. My great-grandfather opened the Chicago Carl Fischer Music Store, which was at the time the largest sheet music dealer in the city of Chicago, right downtown. And then my grandfather after him, and then my father, that's where he learned the business. But it was never owned in my family. In 1967, my father decided he didn't have much money, he decided to buy this small little company called the Gregorian Institute of America, which is what GIA stands for. And he acquired it. And then I came on actually after a couple of years in journalism, never really thinking I would be in the music publishing business. And so I started at GIA over 30 years ago. And then, of course, been very actively growing our educational division, our choral publishing, and especially a huge fan of choral music in particular, and was so honored to be able to acquire Walton Music about almost 7 years ago now and bring Susan on as our main editor. And it's been going gangbusters ever since. So we're here in Chicago. We have our own print shop as well as warehouse. We have about 70 employees. And just trying to get through this crazy pandemic era, and with huge implications for copyright and for trying to make music, especially digital offerings, available to conductors, teachers, and to support composers.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it, at the moment? We just have
a lot of challenges for sure.
Yeah, we just have to hope things get back to normal as soon as possible, and that I guess we can learn from the things that inevitably we've all learned from this process and the diversification that we've done, or things like that they help us in the future, I think. So yeah, I think that's good. Well, why don't we start asking some questions? Well, actually, Susan, you were going to talk through a little bit about your paper, weren't you? Because
why don't I kick off?
Go on, Nick. You go. Can you hear us, Nick? I think Nick's having some problems, so I will continue. So I think you wrote a paper about how it's best to approach publishers with new works, and I think it would be wonderful if you could just give a little précis of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I read it and it was extremely helpful, and I know it's available in the materials and the links associated with this online workshop. But if you could give some tips over this session, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, so the article that I wrote was for the Choral Journal, which is published by the American Choral Directors Association. And it was just kind of my perspective on being an editor and giving some advice to composers about submitting their works for publication at our company or at really any company. And kind of just going through the etiquette of that and what maybe you don't know, especially if you're submitting for the first time. So a few things that I suggest, first off, is know the publisher's catalog. So you want to actually look through the website of a publisher that you're interested in working with, and just make sure that the type of music you write is the type of music that they typically publish. If it's a sacred publisher that publishes only works for church, you wouldn't want to submit something that is completely secular work that's maybe really, really difficult. That wouldn't be the right thing for their market. So you'd want to go find a publisher that publishes that sort of thing. I really suggest that you definitely have your work performed and, if possible, recorded, even if it's just on your smartphone. I think having, I get emails occasionally from composers who say, I just finished this piece and I had to send it right to you. And really, that's okay. Sometimes we like to think that we, as composers, know everything about our songs, but I think it's really important to have real people, real voices, real souls sing the music first and play it before you put it for publication. So many little problems can be revealed and then fixed, and that just gives you a greater chance of having your work published. Another thing is to find the publisher's submission guidelines and follow those very carefully. So most publishers have somewhere on their website a submission area where you can go and actually read all the different things that the publisher is looking for. It's usually things like a PDF of the score, an MP3 of the recording, a cover letter explaining, what this piece was written for, who it's written for, a pronunciation guide if it's not in the language of that publisher, also a translation and the text, just all those elements that really present your work in the best possible way. I mean, I like to think of it as, if you were giving a business pitch to a company of a product you wanted them to sell, you want to give them all the best information and make it look great and sound great. It's going to give you the best chance of having your work published. And we can maybe go into some more of those details a little later. But then I would also say it's important to keep the submission professional. So when you're writing an email to a publisher, because that's usually how music is accepted these days, to just make sure that the email that you're writing is very professional, that it addresses that editor or that publisher in a professional way, rather than saying, hey, I just wrote this song and I wanted to send it to you. You say, dear so-and-so, I'm very happy to be emailing you today and presenting this work to you. Here's my piece, and just writing a very professional email. And then there's some other tips maybe we can get into, but maybe that raises some questions.
And I think that's really interesting. I think that shows the professional approach to submitting a piece shows the commitment that the composer has put in to writing the piece in the first place. It shows that they've, if they've thought of every angle of how they're submitting something, then they're going to have thought of every angle for the piece as well, and it'll be something that would be worth actually looking at.
When I read it, I was amazed at how practical the steps were. It's things like just making sure that you send an MP3 rather than a WAV file, WAV file, and that just makes people's lives easier, and that's what we all want, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, I was grateful.
Yes. Alec, did you?
Sure. And what I was going to add to that also is, we really see our relationship with composers as a partnership. It's our job to make your music, when it's accepted, the best it possibly can be, and to work together with you hand in hand to make sure that, that it looks professional, it has a beautiful cover, that the way we release it, we help, of course, on the marketing side of it as well, with connecting with dealers, with teachers. So it's a long-term relationship. It really takes sometimes even a couple of years from the time maybe someone first thought of an edition to the time that it's edited, published, and then actively circulated and marketed out into the world. And we want that relationship to sustain and be long-term and be productive and truly cooperative.
Yeah. It's a slightly longer-term thing than, as Susan said, just, hey, I've just written a piece, have a look at it. More considered.
I think also it's really important to not underestimate the importance, as you say, of trying to present a sound file, and that's not just showing that commitment, but also like getting a piece actually performed in something before you send it away to a really good professional company like yours. There are so many things we've discovered over the years, which scores that have been sent to us, which look awesome on paper, and then we start to see them and we realize actually there's a lot of things missing here, and equally the other way around, things are a complete mess. But then we sing through them and we think actually this is a phenomenal piece. We never really know until we sign through them. That's what we find. Yeah,
and I think that I work with all levels of composers, and so I know that it's not always possible. Not everyone has a choir at the ready. So what I suggest to people is, if they have friends who sing, to even get a quartet or an octet together and just have your friends sing through it a few times with you, or if you have access to a school choir of some sort or a church choir, do the same thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be a big performance at a big fancy concert hall. It can just be that you're reading through the work with real voices and getting the sense of what actually works and what doesn't. And I've done that quite a lot myself, not just having things performed professionally, but also just getting a group together to sing through.
And I think that may answer Jay Griff composer's question here, which is an electronic MIDI file acceptable for music submissions? What are your thoughts on that?
So, yes, I would always suggest that you, so I will say we will accept a MIDI playback at Walton, we look at every piece that comes through, every piece, because there have been so many times when we found something from an unknown composer that has just been magic. So you never know when that's going to come through. So if you can't get a recording of real people, but you feel like the piece is really in a great shape, a MIDI recording is sometimes okay. It depends on the publisher. So you'll want to ask if that's not made clear on their websites. If you are sending a MIDI file, you're going to want to make sure that you export it from your notation file from Finale or Sibelius as an MP3. Don't try to email a .midi file, because a lot of people aren't able to actually open that on their computer. So you'll want to, there's a setting, you can just export as audio, choose MP3 format, and it'll do the right thing. And yeah, the purpose there is that you don't want the person who you're trying to basically like convince, to publish your work, to have to go through a lot of steps to listen to your recording. So just always make sure it's an MP3. That's the best way. Some composers will try to send a .wav file through Dropbox or something, but that's a lot more clicks. And when we're seeing 600 pieces a year or more, we just don't really have time. A lot of publishers don't have time for that. So just make sure it's that MP3 file.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I actually have a question for Alec, or either of you actually. But once a composer has submitted their work to you guys, what things do you do to kind of protect their copyright and their right to it, or registrations? I know there's like lots of places that you have to register things and to make sure that royalties go to the right place so that the person gets what's owed to them. What sort of, at a very basic level, what sort of things have to happen from your end as a publisher, or if a composer is doing it themselves, to sort of protect their rights and their royalties?
Sure. Well, the first thing is, interestingly, even if you don't register your copyright with in the United States, for example, the U.S. Copyright Office, you are still protected under the law as long as you write copyright, circle C, the year, and the name of the copyright owner. Okay. So you have full rights just by doing that.
So that's a no-brainer.
That's right. So every edition, every manuscript should just say that at the bottom of the first page of music, and then you're protected under the law. When we accept something for publication, of course, then we send you a contract, and what that does is it assigns the copyright, and then in return for royalties, et cetera. And then it's our job then to register the copyright, to enforce that copyright worldwide, to work with it if it's a new composer, to get them signed up with one of the performing rights organizations like ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC here in the US, PRS in the UK. And then to administer. So publishing isn't just about printing a piece of music. It's also about making it available digitally, of course, and about doing licensing and sub-licensing all over the world. So that's kind of our job as a publisher to get it out there and to protect it.
So you kind of do the administrative things, and also a kind of protecting the copyright owner by enforcing it.
Right.
So am I right in thinking so that effectively they can focus their time on writing music, and you can focus on your time on protecting their music and distributing it and things like that? Is that kind of the goals of diversity?
That's right. I mean, luckily, this is a relatively small world, choral music, and folks, I think, do want to do the right thing, and everyone wants to learn, and it's our job to, first of all, in a friendly way, if someone brings to our attention that they're posting things that are illegal on the internet or sharing things, whatever, to call it to their attention, to, if we have to, put a takedown notice with YouTube or one of the other entities. But honestly, what we found is to assume the best intentions. And in general, folks are very quick to respond if we bring something to their attention. And it's not our job to get in big battles with anyone. We want to support everybody, and certainly support the composers as best we can.
Thank you.
Well, that actually leads nicely onto a question here from Philip Nix, talking of copyright and stuff. What are your thoughts on the rise of digital music publishing, and how do you see the future of publishing and protecting copyright in this ever-changing digital landscape?
Well, I'll start, and I'm sure Susan has a lot to add to this as well. So every edition that we publish now, we offer two different ways. We offer it as a physical hard copy printed music, piece of sheet music, and we also offer it as a digital purchase through our web platforms. And what we do there is we do set a minimum. It used to be 10 units before the pandemic hit, and now it's a 3-unit minimum. But folks can purchase our editions digitally. It saves you shipping charge, you get it right away. And we do embed onto the editions the name of the purchaser and the number of copies they have the right to purchase. And so again, it's a little bit of an honor system that that folks tell us how many copies that they want. And there's no doubt in our mind that we need to think of new and better ways of making all the music available digitally. We actually just also licensed I think 300 of our works to an application called My Choral Coach, which is a downloadable app that has a lot of different editions in it. And then we're also looking for all kinds of new opportunities and new ways to make things available digitally, but it's just the reality now. We have to be attentive to that.
Yeah, I'll interject here that what's interesting is the digital sales right now, at least I think really across the board, and what we've heard from the different music shops that we work with, the digital sales are quite small still, probably a lot smaller than you might imagine, that most people are still purchasing their music as hard copies. And the digital sales, one of the questions we had going into offering things digitally was, is that going to negatively impact the overall sales? But what we found is that it's actually just seemed to help in a way. So if something does fairly well digitally, which really isn't that many copies, it does very well in print. So I personally think we're still many years away from everyone having a tablet in rehearsal and having a digital score. There are so many conductors and singers still right now who would much rather have the hard copy. I know I'm that way. I guess I'm old fashioned that way, but I want to know that my paper will be there and not have any technological challenges in the middle of the concert. So I think that's where most people are, and it might take a generation or two to kind of go through until we really switch all over. But that being said, we are heading that way. So a lot of people are working on some better options for offering the music digitally. And something I was talking with someone recently about was just the price of a digital edition versus a print edition. Some people might think that if it's digital, you don't have to pay for the paper and you don't have to pay for shipping and all this stuff. So shouldn't it cost less? But what we see is, at least at our company, is so much of the cost comes before you actually print the music. It's really all in, making sure the composer is paid well with their royalty, making sure that we are marketing to as many people as we can, making sure that our website is beautiful and easy to use. And so by the time you actually get to printing the music on paper, it's really a very small portion of the cost. And then when I was talking with a friend recently, I was thinking, if you bought a television, for example, and you expected that television to last for infinity, wouldn't the price point of that be a lot higher, actually? So if someone buys a PDF and they expect that PDF to last for infinity, maybe we need to rethink that as well.
That's a really good point. And that's actually something I never thought about, the idea that through buying music digitally, you're actually helping support more people discover music digitally by supporting the website and all of those things we talk about. Yeah, that's really
really Susan, I know the feeling of being scared of the technology. In Germany over Christmas, and we have these little clickers that put our pages on, and somehow my clicker had got into audio play mode and had turned the volume up of like my iPad to maximum during a really beautiful quiet part of this piece we were singing. And I was so taken aback by it that I was literally shelved and couldn't move, and my countertenor colleague on my right had to reach over and just turn my iPad off.
Yeah, and I have seen someone drop their iPad onto the floor, and that that can happen, right? So it's you drop your $2 octavo to the floor, and you can pick it up, and you're right back where you started. So.
Yeah.
Do all of you in the King Singers use a tablet?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we all have clickers as well. And actually, thinking of clicker, terrible clicker stories, I think Johnny's clicker once paired with my iPad, and there I was trying to sing to my score. He was turning loads of pages, and my score kept turning pages. Come on. Yeah. It's also much harder to do with copies. So.
I think that sort of thing, it's not so scary if you're a singer in a really large choir, but if you're the conductor or if you're in a small group where you're the only one on your part, that's terrifying.
But yeah.
I do know, though, one of the things that's on the good side is, for example, if you're in a distance learning environment, if you're a teacher and all your students are remote, you can easily purchase a digital version of a score and then share it with your students. You don't have to worry about all the shipping. You don't have to worry about the students coming to a certain location. So there are definitely advantages, and that's why for us as a publisher, we have to be both and just and then let the performers and conductors choose the options that are best for them.
Yeah.
I've got a quick question about the kind of rights in the music. Obviously, when a composer is setting, I suppose, arranging an existing sort of piece of music, or indeed setting words that are not in the public domain, what sort of things do they need to have done before they come to you to make sure they have obviously fulfilled their obligations to other copyright owners, in the same way that you're going to protect their copyright in the music they have created?
They should find the copyright holder for any text that is being used. That's usually the poet. Sometimes if it's a very famous poet, it can be administered by a company, by a publisher. So that's usually as easy as just Googling that poet's name and even looking in some of their books of poetry and looking for that copyright line and finding the company name and just sending an email or a letter to that publisher or that poet and asking for permission to set the text. Really important to do that before you ever start using setting it to music, because they can say no. There are some poets who I love their poetry, and I've found out luckily before trying to set their poetry, that they don't allow it to be set to music. If it is a song that is copyrighted, same thing. You have to find who owns that copyright and ask permission to make an arrangement first. A lot of pop songs, popular songs, those are administered by big choral publishers. So you can kind of go through it that way. A good way to find that information, a lot of that information is going on ascap.com. That's usually where I start, actually, and just looking up the title and the songwriter, and that will pull up whoever contact for information about that song. Once that permission is granted for either setting the text or making an arrangement of an existing song, then you're good to go, and you can make the arrangement or the setting. Sometimes there's a fee involved. A lot of times, especially for making an arrangement, there's a fee involved. Sometimes poets, they'll charge you something, sometimes they don't. Once a piece is accepted for publication, then it's our responsibility to get that permission to publish that setting for you, for the composer. So the composer doesn't need to, the composer doesn't need to get that.
And then the actual publishing it, I see.
So the composer should get, permission to set the poem or to arrange the song. The publisher will take care of getting the permission to publish the song, the arrangement or the setting that uses that text, and to print it and to license it and all of that.
So could it be that they have permission at stage 1, but then don't get it at stage 2, or is it more stage 2 is a formality?
First thing you said. Sometimes you'll get it. It's pretty easy to get the arrangement or the permission to make an arrangement. but sometimes it's hard to get that arrangement published, especially if it's a popular song. I think
I would definitely, right. There's nothing worse than putting your blood, sweat, and tears into a setting of somebody's text and then finding out you can't get the permissions to publish it. So most people will get permission if it's just one performance, one event. But when it comes to us as a publisher, it does take it to a certain level. And I would say that it's not good. I mean, to find texts either in the public domain or from folks who've already allowed their text to be licensed in the choral community is better. Sometimes, like a world famous poet, Maya Angelou, amazing writing, but just major company, they don't know our choral community very well. It can take months sometimes to get permissions. So definitely, if you're wanting to set some texts, you can find out if they'll let you do it for yourself, but also find if they're open to licensing it for publication. I think it's appropriate to ask. And then from our end, as a publisher, of course, people do ask us all the time, and it's our job to be really responsive to composers and artists who ask that question. So we represent a lot of different text writers, and very proud of it. And so who publishes and how easy it is to get those answers should be a factor in you deciding whether or not to set those texts, for sure.
Yeah. So there's actually quite a lot of steps to do before you even start putting pen to paper or mouse to Sibelius with all this stuff.
Well, I think Eddie, I'm right in saying that we're glad to say that all of the texts for this competition have been cleared.
Yes, they have.
And we're very grateful to all the composers who've submitted, who've allowed us to use them. It's really great. Yeah, we're so happy.
Absolutely. And so talking of this competition, if people are writing their music, obviously it feels like a very personal thing to create a piece of music. And then when it's sent to a publisher like you guys, what then happens to it? What's the process after a submission comes in?
I normally will look at all of the submissions first and get an idea of what is kind of in the hopper. And then our company is a little bit unique, where I actually work with we call it our editorial review board. It's 4 conductors from across the country, all from different levels, different backgrounds, different perspectives. And I'll send the submissions to them. We meet 4 times a year. So before the meeting, everyone will look through all of the submissions we have lined up. And together we decide on what is to be published. And I've really loved that process because it means that not everything's just kind of snowballing on my own opinions. It's a collective effort from all these different people. Sometimes there are things that I'm like, I don't really like that, but they all love it. And then sometimes there are things that they don't really like, but I like a lot. And so we kind of make those compromises here and there. And I think we end up with a really nice variety of styles because of it. And it makes our catalog richer. So after something's accepted for publication or not accepted, I send an email to every composer, whether it was accepted or not accepted, and let them know. And then those that were accepted, we move into production at that point. A question I get all the time is, so when you're editing the piece, do you change the music? And I will say that, no, we really don't. I mean, other than just making sure things are notated correctly, like maybe it's in 4/4 time and we really want to make sure to see beat 3 in each measure. So we'll make sure that everything's notated, to be able to make it as easily readable as possible to the singer. But otherwise, what we accept is usually, except for kind of rare occasions, it's ready to go.
What I would say is we only take, of course, a small percentage of the submissions that come our way, and please don't be discouraged if you're not accepted right away. Just please keep at it. Share the edition with your friends. As much as we would like to give critical feedback for every edition we can't accept, we're not able to do it. And sometimes it could be as simple as, well, we already have a lot of other settings of that text, or, I mean, it could be, or we're not really interested in that particular area. So it could be a beautiful piece, but it just isn't fitting our particular needs at the moment. So try not to take it personally, share with other friends. The other thing I would say is, I think it's etiquette that you only submit to one publisher at a time. So you submit to the first publisher, and then if they don't accept it, then you can take it to another publisher, and you should feel free to do that for sure. We've accepted things that have been rejected by other publishers and vice versa. And again, keep at it. Keep honing your skills. Share the work with your friends. Get feedback from them, and don't be discouraged. We're just, we just can't take everything that comes our way as much as we'd like to.
That's great. It's tough, isn't it? Because composition is such a personal thing.
It is.
Very often, it's such a personal creation, and it can be very disheartening sometimes too. But as you say, sometimes it's just not quite the right fit for the right style or whatever. I like that idea of just looking for the right publisher as well. Actually, on that note, Linda Purvis asks, how do you feel about non-traditional notation?
I'm kind of curious to know more about what Linda means there, because the thing that comes,
graphic. I don't know.
I think it depends. To me, it depends on the piece and what really the piece is trying to do. So I think it's really important to keep the authenticity of a work, the integrity of a work, and what the composer meant, or especially if it's folk music from a certain culture that maybe has some sort of interesting non-traditional notation. I think that's really important to try to honor that if we can. Maybe giving even giving an option where it can look traditional, but then maybe here's what it looks like in the original folk music. So I think it really depends on the piece. We certainly don't have a lot of works that have non-traditional notation in the Walton catalog, but we do have some, especially back from the 70s. There was this period of time where a few composers in the Walton catalog were writing some really interesting music, and you look at the pages and you just think, what in the world is happening here? Some kind of popular songs, I can't recall the names right now. But so we do have a little bit of that. So
okay.
Graphic improvisation. We do also have some works that have aleatoric sections or some improvisatory sections, and that if it works with the piece, if it's compelling and appealing, then totally we will be all over that.
If it's well presented and well explained, that's the most important thing. And actually, that leads on to this sort of question about what stands out to you when you receive a submission. There's some things that will really sort of make you go, oh wow, that's impressive. Or
something when I'm opening in a score, from my email for the first time. A couple of things that are really important to me, this might not be every editor, but to me, are the title and the text, really first and foremost. If I see in my email that it's Laudate Dominum, okay, we have just hundreds and hundreds of Laudate Dominums out there. It doesn't necessarily mean that this one isn't also going to be amazing. It might be, but I don't get super excited about that because there are just so many people have set that text, and for good reason. So it really, after that point, has to really stand out musically for us to, justify publishing another Laudate Dominum. You can, think of all those other texts that you've seen set a million times. The next thing that I look for is if the piece on the page has just black notes just everywhere, just on every page, just thick, just with a black, print on the page. I don't usually, my instinct is that might not be too interesting to me, and it's usually right. I'm usually proven right with that. When something has lots of negative space, lots of white space, that it uses, different textures, that's something I look for a lot is texture variants. So like maybe not everyone sings all the things all the time. Maybe sometimes it's just 2 voices, maybe sometimes it's all 4 voices, or maybe everyone's in unison. That sort of variance of texture, I think, is usually really compelling and also really fun to sing and listen to. I think also counterpoint is something I just glance at the page to try to see first, rather than just everyone on the same rhythms the whole time in homophony. When you have the use of counterpoint, and I don't necessarily mean Bach, I mean just counterpoint in a modern way, where it's, here's one voice and here's this answer to this first voice. That is so much easier to sing, so much more fun to sing, so much more interesting to listen to. So those are things just even before I listen or play through or sing through the piece that catch my eye.
I think our review board too, they're looking for original or fresh takes on things.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's the hardest thing to do, but what's different? What is the twist? Is there something about this that makes it unique and different? And, I think that it's hard to put your finger on exactly what that is. And, we don't get it right 100% of the time either. We don't always have the crystal ball on what is going to sell and what isn't going to sell, but having that original spark that we can point to about a piece will really help it get published.
Yes.
I've got a question actually, and I think Connor Redmond has sort of asked similar. Mine was going to be, what do you find the most successful sources of promotion? So it's a kind of promotion question. And then Connor has said, what are the most useful things that a composer can do or create to help you promote a new work? Mm-hmm. Part of this partnership thing you mentioned at the start, I guess.
Alec, do you want to start?
Sure. So, a variety of things. Of course, things that the publisher is doing is we're getting it out to, we have a kind of a VIP list, people that we consider to be movers and shakers in the choral community who if they decide to perform something, a lot of folks will take notice of that. And we send complimentary copies of scores to them for consideration, or we're in dialogue with them. Of course, we have a very significant presence when they happen, and they aren't virtual, at choral conferences all around the country or the world. We have great relationships, for example, in the UK with Hal Leonard Europe. And then, of course, our other relationships with our other major dealers, like here in the US, J.W. Pepper or Sheet Music Plus, and then our own web presence, our own social media, our own ability to do, for example, virtual reading sessions in this particular moment. And so, and then we have a physical catalog. One of the things that we found, for example, in our release is instead of releasing things in little trickles throughout the calendar year, we release all of our new Walton editions in one fell swoop, usually in April. It has maximum impact and maximum response. We mail it to choral directors from our list. It's a lot of choral directors get it to that. We also work with some of the different conferences to have our music programmed at those conferences. And then really with composers and that partnership, which you talked about, which again is so important, we try to brainstorm with you. What do you think we should be doing? Is this, maybe this text relates to, it's about watching birds. Maybe there's some bird society that you're a part of that would want a copy of that score or might be able to get the word out about it. Or, maybe you as a composer would like to do a reading session and you want some promotional copies for a promotion that you want to do, and we're happy to do that. So, so part of it is just having the time to do a little bit of brainstorming with you as a composer. What's unique about this? What message should we send about it? What should we do that's beyond just kind of the standard things that we do with all of our editions to give that extra attention to the edition?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think some of the best things that really work for us in promotion are just kind of reiterating what Alex said, are when something's performed by an honor choir or a festival choir, because then that's usually a lot of people coming together from different schools or different churches or whatever it might be. And then they all then know that song and they can take it back to all of their different choirs. That makes a big impact. the conference performance, wherever that, at ACDA, ABCD, all of those different places, when you get a performance of a work on a conference, that's great. And then also YouTube videos. If someone has a really compelling YouTube video, it might be a live performance, or it might be a recording of the song that they've maybe put images to, that can make a big impact as well. Composers, I think, we tend to think, oh, social media, and that certainly is fun and has some impact, but just posting your song on social media isn't necessarily going to have a huge impact. However, if you as a composer can really work your relationships with conductors, not in any kind of shady way at all, but like just really truly build your relationships with conductors. And then when you have a new piece, make sure to send a copy to, or a video or recording to that conductor. Those relationships are very important, much more so, I think, than just the Facebook post or something.
Right. One thing I've seen too that has been great that happens, I know, is if you have that relationship with the conductor, say of a high school choir, and you send the piece, you can offer to be on a virtual Zoom call with the high school choir members and talk about the piece. And, the choir singers love it. They love to meet the person behind the score. And it's a great opportunity for you to talk about the piece and little insights that you might have and how it should be performed. And again, it's, music is that incredible connector. It's that human connection that we all crave and through music. And what better way to have that opportunity to use a wonderful piece of music to just connect you together with singers, with choral conductors, with the composer. And so that's a great way for you to help the process. And it's fun.
Alec, that actually leads me on to a question I wanted to ask, which is, obviously, I think over this lockdown period, we've seen a sort of boom of people on social media doing musical things. I know through YouTube, when something is posted, it is the YouTube system directs the right royalties to the right places. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that YouTube had set up a system to make, like record labels, to make sure that the underlying copyright owners get paid.
You're a little wrong, but we'll talk about that in a second.
Okay, yeah, please correct me. How do you feel about the fact that when things are on social media, obviously they're totally out there, not protected in that way? Does that worry you, or does the PR element of it sort of outweigh?
Well, I think some of it is good. I mean, obviously, I think a recording that you have access to that you can share out, the one that you submit to us, if it's good enough, we think that that's a great way to help promote the work and to put that on YouTube, et cetera, for us to have it, to put on our CDs or on our website for folks to have and look at, we think can be really great. So your question about YouTube. So YouTube is really good at flagging commercial recordings. So if the King's Singer have a commercial recording, yes, they have the tools. They'll credit it. They'll pay the royalties on it. They've cleared all of that. What's different is if it's a live recording or a recording that's not commercially released, which honestly is a lot of what happens in our world. There's no way for any of the algorithms in YouTube to capture that. So, and they don't pretend to capture it. And actually, a YouTube viewing actually has a couple of different rights in it. There is a master use or a public performance right, and then what's called a sync right, which is the bundling of a video together with the performance. And so, really, all that YouTube has cleared are either the master uses or these performance rights with ASCAP, CSAC, PRS, and all those other performance rights societies. But the sync is not at all part of what YouTube does. And so, really, if you have a virtual choir performance or a performance of your own choir when we can meet in person, and you want to put them in YouTube, you technically do need to get that cleared from the copyright owner. And for us as a choral music publisher, we actually have devoted more resources to making sure that we're responsive in getting those rights cleared. There typically is a charge for it. It's not free, but it's usually affordable. I think that the challenge right now is let's say you have a concert of 10 different works, all from 10 different publishers. Just the administrative burden of getting 10 different clearances can be high. So I would say keep it to just 2 or 3 works if you want to put it on YouTube. Get those all cleared and work with publishers that you have good relationships with, that you know will be attentive to getting the clearances over to you that you need.
Best to just do a performance solely of Walton music.
Absolutely.
So what you're saying, go on, sorry.
I just wanted to jump in there a little bit, that when you're wanting to post a video on YouTube and you're going to ask the publisher for the permission for that and maybe pay a fee, what's so important about it is that a good portion of that fee goes straight to the composer. And especially in this time, and that's why we do it, it's to make sure that those composers are being paid for the use of their music. And in this time, when a lot of people are not buying sheet music, that's a huge, huge chunk of what our composers and all composers receive for their livelihood. So right now, when so many people are going to be doing things virtually and posting videos, please do go ask the publishers for permission, and just realize that any fee you have to pay, it's going back to that composer, and it's going to help them survive this.
Right. This is all about supporting composers to be inspired to create even more wonderful music for you to perform and sing. And none of this should be onerous or particularly cost prohibitive. It should be all pretty affordable.
Supporting everyone, I guess, that, people being able to do what they want with other people's music, but equally the person who creates it getting what they should from it. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So YouTube does some of it, but not all of it. So people shouldn't be, and Facebook, of course, does none of it.
Right.
Even worse, I guess. But it does have, I guess, a bit like YouTube, some promotional value.
Yeah, we love that when people have a great video and want to post it. I mean, we'll never say no. And sometimes if it's a particularly really awesome, like very well produced type of video, we'll say, we won't charge you for that. Also, can we please post that on our website as the official video for this song and in return? So, huge institutions that are well known, for example, like St. Olaf College, they ask us permission for everything they post. And so these people, these big, great choirs are making sure they're doing it right. And I think we all just need to do our part. But yes, we love when people have videos of their performances. It's so helpful to our promotion.
Great. Nick, have we still got you? I know you had a bit of it.
It's really lovely to hear all these things and actually the real deep importance of why rights exist in the first place. As you say, it's helping safeguard the composers and continue that good music creation. Claire Long here with a question: which is the strongest, most performed type of choral music? Truly a cappella, chorus and piano or organ, or with an ensemble or orchestra? What do you reckon in your experience?
Hi, Claire. Thanks for the question. I think from my perception of what sells the best for our company, it's either SATB music with piano accompaniment is probably when you get a great piece in that world, that just goes gangbusters because it's accessible. Lots of different types of groups can use that sort of thing. And then I would say probably SATB a cappella, but without much divisi, and maybe things that are in Latin or for us in English because we're in the United States. That's really what does the best for us. What I love to tell composers, though, is that what always works best is when you're writing for real souls. So if you have a choir you can actually write for, and an occasion you can write for, and you write just the right thing for that choir and that occasion. If it calls for orchestra and that's what is needed and that's what really fits the piece best, then I would say always go for that. Don't try to just fit into something for popularity, I guess. Alec, anything to add on that?
Yeah, sometimes sometimes people want to show off their composing chops and put a ton of divisi in work and those sorts of things. Really, though, the for us, where are the most number of choirs? They tend to be in our high schools. They tend to have access to a piano, not an organ. So really, sometimes the hardest music to compose is the simplest, but yet beautiful. So start with an amazing text. Text always comes first. And then if it can be sung really beautifully and simply with the skills of a good high school, that's going to probably generate the most amount of sales. For us as a publisher, we're not just interested in that. We obviously want to be much more than that. But from a selling standpoint, that's kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah, we kind of, at Walton, we look for those kind of bread and butter pieces that come through that we know just off the bat they're going to sell so well, and they're going to support all of these other things we really like to do. So we do publish a lot of really advanced music. I love the crazy composition that goes everywhere and has all the notes. I love that. The truth is, it's just not going to sell that many copies. But I love that we can have a balance of those things at our company. And, a piece that comes to my mind just as we're talking about this is an arrangement of Steal Away that Patrick Quigley did. He's the artistic director of Seraphic Fire here in the United States. This arrangement is for, really, it's SATB, but it's just barely in 4 parts. And it has piano, this improvised piano accompaniment that he improvised and then transcribed. And it's so incredibly simple and so moving. And when choirs pick up that piece, they're just immediately able to make music. And that's maybe not always the thing that you need for every piece, but a piece like that where like you can just pick it up, sing it through, and just immediately start to make music, that is what a lot of choirs are looking for.
And I just say also that that there's a whole ecosystem, the composer, the conductor, the singer, the publisher, and we're all in this together. And we see ourselves as your partners, and it's our job to make everything that we do the best it possibly can be in partnership with you as composers, and then to support the conductors to help them make great choices and what to perform and what to sing, and then of course for them to work as best as possibly and as easily as possibly with their choirs, either virtually or together in an ensemble, and we see ourselves all linked together, and we all need and for the best music to happen, it all has to work in this amazing ecosystem that we have. And I just feel it's an incredible honor. I'm a huge fan of what we do, of the music that we publish, and working with Susan, who's incredible. And again, I just love what we do, and an honor to be here and in support of this community.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Alec.
Well, I think it's nearly time to wrap up, but do you have any sort of final last minute tips for all our composers out there?
I think just for me, what I said.
Go ahead, Alec.
I just say hang in there, be persistent, don't give up, hone your skills, hold your head high, and even if we can't accept everything that you send our way, we know you're there and doing it for the right reasons, and we want to support that.
Yeah, I would say to composers, find amazing texts and then honor that text the best that you can. Really set that text so that the first time someone hears it, they can understand the importance of it. And also uphold your artistry. Don't ever write music just for publication. Write it for art's sake. And when that happens to align with publication, that's magic. But just always uphold your own artistry and the integrity of your compositional voice. And don't get discouraged if maybe it's not right for publication. It's still right for what you wrote it for.
Thank you, Alec and Susan. It's been really, really wonderful to talk to you today. We really do appreciate it. And I know all the people that have been here have appreciated it as well. There's been some incredibly useful tips all the way from, about what to do before writing, what to do once you've written the piece, and what the relationship involves once the piece has been written and is submitted, and the financial aspects of it. Really, really appreciate it. It's been certainly very useful for me as well. So I'm delighted that I managed to host this one with Nick. So on behalf of all 6 of us, thank you so much. And as this is the last of our workshops, thank you to all of our other guests who have appeared over the last few weeks, and to the wonderful team that we have behind the scenes for the New Music Prize and our foundation for making all this possible. And finally, just a big thank you to all the people who are currently writing away for the competition. We can't wait to see what you've done and perform it in the best possible way we can. Thank you very much for everyone, and thank you again to you two. It's been wonderful.
Thanks so much. Our honor.
Yeah, thank you so much. So fun.
Thank you, everyone.
Take
Bye.
care, everybody. Thank you.